$20,000. That's the number people quietly believe will change everything. Not $1,000. Not $5,000. Something specific happens in people's heads around $20,000. A sense that once they hit it, the financial anxiety finally stops. Here's what nobody warns you about. $20,000 does change something, just not the thing you think it will. Let's start with what actually happens at this number, because the psychology here is more interesting than the math. At $20,000, most people cross a threshold researchers call psychological solvency. The point where you stop feeling like you're one bad week away from disaster. Before this number, your brain is running a background process almost constantly. Can I afford this? What if something breaks? What if I lose my job next month? It's exhausting in a way most people don't even register as exhausting because they've never lived without it. At around $20,000 for many people, that background process quiets down. And the relief feels enormous for about 6 weeks. Then something else happens, and this is the part nobody warns you about. The goalpost moves. Researchers studying financial satisfaction have found something that sounds almost cruel. Each financial milestone you hit resets your baseline almost immediately. The relief from reaching $20,000 doesn't last because your brain stops comparing you to where you used to be and starts comparing you to where you could be next. This is the same mechanism behind hedonic adaptation, your brain measuring change, not amount. $20,000 felt huge when you had $200. It starts feeling almost ordinary within weeks of having it because the comparison point already moved. So if $20,000 doesn't fix the anxiety permanently, what does it actually change? 3 things, and they're more useful than the feeling you were hoping for. First, optionality. At $20,000 for the first time, you can absorb a real financial shock without it becoming a crisis. A $2,000 car repair stops being a catastrophe and becomes an inconvenience. That's not nothing. That's the actual function of an emergency fund finally working as designed. Second, $20,000 is usually the first amount large enough to make compounding feel real instead of theoretical. At $1,000 invested, an 8% return is $80 a year, barely noticeable. At $20,000, that same 8% is $1,600 a year, without you doing anything. The math doesn't change. Your relationship to the math does. Third, and this is the one almost nobody talks about, $20,000 is roughly the point where people stop making purely defensive financial decisions and start being able to make offensive ones. Not because the number is magic, but because below it, every dollar is allocated to surviving the next emergency. Above it, some dollars are finally free to be allocated toward growth. Here's where it gets uncomfortable though, because this is also exactly where a predictable mistake shows up. The moment people feel that relief, that I finally have a cushion feeling, a huge number of them do one of 2 things, and both of them quietly undo the progress. The first mistake, lifestyle creep. You finally feel safe, so the dinners get nicer, the subscriptions multiply, the I deserve this purchases start showing up more often. None of them feel reckless individually. Collectively, they're the exact mechanism that keeps people circling the same number for years instead of building past it. The second mistake, leaving it all sitting in cash, because the relief of finally having a cushion makes people scared to touch it, even to invest a portion of it. Researchers call this cash hoarding behavior, and it's one of the most common reactions right after someone crosses a financial relief threshold. The irony is brutal. The exact moment you have enough safety to start investing is the exact moment fear tells you not to. So if you've recently crossed or you're approaching that $20,000 mark, here's what actually works, based on what separates people who keep growing from people who plateau here for years. Step 1. Name the number that's actually yours. For most people, 3 to 6 months of expenses land somewhere between $15,000 and $25,000. Once your emergency fund hits that specific number, not a round number that feels nice, your number, anything past it gets a different job. Step 2. The moment you cross your number, decide in advance what the next dollar is for. Not later when it's tempting to just let it sit. In advance, while you're calm and not making the decision in the emotional afterglow of finally feeling safe. Step 3. Split new money the moment it arrives automatically, before it touches your regular checking account. A fixed percentage to growth, a fixed percentage to whatever goal comes next, vacation, house, retirement. The automation matters because willpower is reliably weaker than convenience. Step 4. Revisit the number every 12 months, not every week. Checking your progress constantly creates the same anxiety loop you were trying to escape. Your brain treating every small dip as a crisis instead of normal movement. Here's the part that actually matters more than the $20,000 itself. The number was never really the goal. The skill of crossing it without immediately undoing the progress, that's the actual milestone. Because here's what happens to people who get this right. The jump from $20,000 to $50,000 happens faster than the jump from $0 to $20,000 did. Not because they suddenly earn dramatically more, but because some of the money is finally working instead of just sitting. And the jump from $50,000 to $100,000 happens faster still. For the exact same reason, compounding on top of itself. This is why financial advisors sometimes describe the first $20,000 to $100,000 as the hardest stretch in someone's entire financial life. Even though the dollar amounts involved are smaller than what comes later. It's the stretch where the habits either get built or they don't. So if you're sitting somewhere below $20,000 right now, here's the actual reframe: you're not behind. You're in the stretch that determines everything after it. And if you've already crossed it and noticed the relief didn't stick the way you expected, that's not a sign you did something wrong. That's just what every single person experiences at this number. Because your brain was never built to stay satisfied. It was built to keep moving the target. The only real choice is what you do with the dollars once the target moves. Whether they get spent quietly trying to recreate that 6-week feeling of relief, or whether they get put to work so the next milestone takes less time to reach than this one did. $20,000 doesn't change everything, but it changes exactly enough if you know what to actually do with it.